Welcome back to Rav Pinson's podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern man. Today's episode was sponsored in the merit of the coming of Mashiach. May it be speedily in our days. Today's episode is the 31st in our Q&A series.
What is the definition of Jewish music? And in particular, what's the definition of a niggin?
So to understand a little bit what is particular to Jewish music, what is the idea of a nigun? And a nigun is nun gimel nun, so it's a palindrome that goes backwards and forwards. Nun gimel nun, gimel nun. So it actually is progressive, nun to gimel to nun, but then it goes backwards. So it's cyclical, linear. We'll have to understand what that is, but that's certainly what a nigun is. It has a certain crescendo. You're going to a certain location, but then you go back to the beginning, and you're constantly growing. So in general, for many years, since after the Churban, since after the destruction of the second base of Mikdash, so the Gemara says already that the Batla Shir, that the song has ended, the music has died. And that's particular for all types of music that was being played outside the synagogue, outside the shul, and not by weddings, etc. Like in the Gunachal, like the idea of playing music for the sake of playing music was batla. There was always, throughout history, there were certain paitanim, there were certain types of songs done by chazanim, by cantors that were certain like tonalities and chants and types of rhythmic sounds, but they were not like full songs. It wasn't songs, and this was on for many, many years, until music had like a renaissance, and certainly piyutim had a very strong renaissance when the light of the future started becoming revealed, when the nitzes of Mashiach, the sparks of Mashiach started becoming revealed. Because a person is not supposed to fill their mouth with laughter in this world, like the Moreh Naim writes, but if you're connected to Elam Haba, if you're connected to the future, then it's even possible in the present. And there were certain times and periods, and certainly beginning with the teachings of the Kabbalists and the Kabbalah that lived in Tzfas in the 1500s, with the Arizal and with the Ramak, and with all the great students of the Ari, there was a new renaissance of piyutim, like types of poems, religious poems that were created, so much so that it became part of liturgy, became part of davening. And like famously, Shlomo Alkabatz writes L'chadoidi, and then there was also another infamous character called Yisrael Najara that also wrote a lot of piyutim, a lot of different types of songs. These are songs with words. Dari held from this, the Yisrael Najjar very strongly, said his piyutim have a very high source.
His most famous is Karib
Olam, yeah. And the Reb Chaim Vital doesn't like him. He was the Mozart. He was a little strange. I once talked about this, that he was also very lazy. So he would hear these Spanish poems, and instead of Senora, he would change it to Shem Naira. So it was like a very easy switching. He'd almost use the same structures of other poems. He just changed the words a little bit.
So he would even use like the phonetic.
Yeah, the phonetic sounds. Yeah, correct. So like Shem Nair became instead of Sonora. But anyways, that was a particular time, and there was definitely a renaissance. And there's we'll talk about this in a second. But there was a certain renaissance with the opening of Kabbalah, with the opening of spiritual wisdom, higher spiritual wisdom. There was opening up of this musical talent, of this musical thing. This happened in a much stronger sense with the revealing of the Baal Shem Tov Chassidus. When the Baal Shem Tov became revealed, that's when all of a sudden you have a tremendous amount of nigunim being produced, a tremendous amount of songs, wordless songs with words on different psukim, different verses. But nigunim became a very popular phenomenon. And what's kind of fascinating is that's when Western music also started happening. right after the Baal Shem. I would say, said this many times. The Baal Shem and all big tzaddikim, they not only reveal a certain truth, a new oil that comes onto this world, a type of light that comes onto this world, that's revealed in the world of Torah, but it affects the entire world. And you see that all Western music, classical Western music, all begins at that time period, very shortly thereafter, where all the great musicians in the Western canon start producing these musics. So generally, there is a deep connection between spiritual wisdom, Kabbalah, Sod, the inner secrets of the Torah, and music. That the Tikkun HaZohar is a good example of this, where Tikkun HaZohar is a classic, a book that was written, that was revealed, parts of the Zohar, a very deep book on Kabbalah. Speaking about the first pasuk in Bereshis. And Tikkun HaZohar also talks about the vowels and a lot about music. A lot of the sources of music, of Nigum Kafel and Nigum Mishulish, all these types of this conversation about a double song, or a song that's a simple song, or essence song. This is all connected to Tikkun HaZohar. There was a story that once students of the Baal HaTanya, the Alter Rebbe, came to him and told him they're having difficulty understanding Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe told them that they're missing one element. They're learning Tanya, which is beautiful, and they're trying to understand it intellectually, which is great, but they're missing one element. They're missing song, listen to Gino. And if they had Nigino, they would be able to understand it. It's a famous saying by Bill Parche. It's brought down the Sikhs of the Rayats, that someone has a chush Nigino, and someone also has a chush someone has a good sense of song. Someone that's musical is someone also that has a good sense of chassidus, to understand chassidus. It's even brought down this idea, similar idea is brought down in the Gra. The Mendel Shklau brings down the name of his teacher, his Rebbe, the Gra, that the Gra writes that someone that doesn't have a good understanding of music, which is one of the chachmas of music, one of the 7 wisdoms is music, cannot also understand Sod. So there's definitely a deeper connection, because we'll talk in a moment that music allows a person to have an expansive experience, to transcend. This, of course, you find this very classically with this in the prophets, the story in the Nevi'im, that that when the singer, the player of music played his music, that's when the Ruach Hashem, that's when the wisdom, that's when prophecy happened. And when the teaching of the Maggid about this is when the music was coming through the person. That it's like when the person became an instrument, that he's no longer conscious of himself singing. And the music was like flowing through him. It allowed for the prophet, the Navi, to have experience of prophecy. And the Avodas HaKodesh, Meir Ben Gaban, actually writes that there are 2 opinions about this: whether music was only to induce the prophet to a prophetic state, or it's even possible that music was played throughout the entire prophecy. Sort of, it was like the background of the prophetic state. So music was that place that allowed a person to have that expansiveness, that openness, that allowed a person to transcend what this is, the left brain, if you wish, the very logical. So in music itself, you see already that there's a mimer Kotzer, there's a short mimer for the Alter Rebbe in the Mamar Katzar and Galus. He says, the Alter Rebbe writes there, that there's Nikuni Yishmaelim, which is like Middle Eastern music from the children of Ishmael, and there's Niguna Edom and Yavan, there's like the Western music, Middle Eastern music and Western music. And he says that Western music, Yavam music, Edom music, power music of power, has a lot of Gvura and joy, Gvura and Simcha. And he says Yishmael has a lot of Chesed and Gvura. Chesed, more and Merirus, more like introspection, or more inwardness. That's one way of thinking about it. There's also a mimer, incidentally, the Alter Rebbe also talks about the difference between people in the south of the world versus the north of the world. So the north is Gevura, and the south is Chesed. If you're positioned to Mizrach, to the east, So the north is to the left, which is Gvura. So people, in terms of their skin tone, it says that lighter skinned people are in the north. So because it's the opposite. The Gevura shows up at Chesed, and people that are coming from the south, which is more Chesed, have darker skins, which is also again related to music. The Ramajid of the Valley has a lot of conversation about this in terms of different types of music styles and different types of dress and different types of color, pigmentations of colors. Also has to do with where people exist in different parts of the hemisphere of the world. But if you want to just make a more general understanding of this, because you can fine-tune this deeper and deeper, but let's just say in a very general way, there are two types, there are two styles. There's what we'll call Western music, which the peak of Western music will be like classical music, and then everything is a derivative of that style. It will be Western music, and there will be Eastern music. So not Middle Eastern music, but Eastern music in general, in the East. So the difference in Eastern music and Western music is very interesting. That Eastern music, which is, let's say, Asia, or even Africa, we'll call that part of that, is very much rhythm-based, and it's very cyclical, the music. Which means, especially in like other not Western music, you're using the same tone, and you're repeating it over and over again.
It's called, like, also drones, we have holding out notes.
Yeah, holding out notes, exactly. And repetition.
So like rounds.
Round, exactly. That's exactly what I want to say. There's a circular notion to the music. The reason why there's a circular notion to music is because it's a reflection of the mindset of the Eastern person. In general, in Asia, as a collective, we're not going to get into specifics because that's a long conversation, but in general, there's a certain sense that life is cyclical. That there's that even creation is cyclical. There's like the great years, and there's like cycles of time. There's no strong sense of linear progression in time. Time is more cyclical. Therefore, there's no creation and then redemption. There's no past moving into the future. There's no progress. There's no movement. There's no hope. There's no future. That is a very, we'll say soon, it's a very Torah idea. But that idea is very much ancient, and it's also pagan. It's a very pagan idea in general. The cyclical nature of creation is a pagan idea. Why is it pagan? Because it's an observation of the world. Basically, you're looking at the world, and you're seeing seasons changing. You're looking at the nature. You're seeing the changes of nature, the cyclical patterns of nature, the summer, spring, fall, winter, etc. Everything's moving in patterns. So you say life follows the cyclical structure. Life in general, the cosmic creation, follows the same pattern of teva, of the nature of creation. And therefore, the music that's produced, which is an expression of self, it's like the subconscious expression of the collective, is produced in such a way that it's also cyclical. Now, in the Torah, there is this idea that there's music to nature. There's a musical song to nature. The Medrash brings this down. It really says also the Gemara in Yuma is Chavalef is Meruma is the Rama Mar Nevuchim, and again it's a lot of speak about this idea that there's a shira, there's a song of the celestial spheres, that since everything is moving, everything is circling, really. Mesav Vasibas, this is where the Rambam talks about the world, the celestial spheres.
Like orbit.
It's orbiting, so it's turning, it's moving, and the turning of the creation of the orbits of everything that's being turned creates movement, and movement creates sound. And sound is a type of music. There's a certain type of music that is cyclical within the nature of the creation. There's a cyclical type of music. In the Reishis Chacham Sharava, by Lo de Vidas, which one a student of the Ramak in the 1500s, the Reishis Chacham writes that there was a person that went from Tzfas to the east. This is not a phenomenon that happened now in this generation. It's happened already 500 years ago. This character went to the east, and when he came back, the Reishis Chacham said he was deaf. And he said because that in a deep meditative state, he heard the sounds of the orbit, of the planets, of the cycling of the world, and he went deaf. So this is Reish Chachma says. So there's a very subtle sound, and the Gemara talks about the Gemara in Yuma speaks about the sound of Ammonia Shel Roimi that clouds out all the sounds. That the sounds of commerce, the sounds of the world functioning, just crowds out the sound. But there is a sound. This is also what the Chazal talk about the Sichas Tkalim. That there's the speech of the trees. Famously, the Gemara talks about in Sukkah, when it mentions all the milas. There's idea of Sichas Tkalim, that this idea of the Perek Shira, the Perek of Shira, that everything in this world is singing a song. This is the cyclical nature of music. Okay, but then there's also in the West, in the Western world, which is very much affected, of course, by and is predicated on the Yesodus of Torah, that in the consciousness of people for a few thousand years already, the ideas of linear time, progressive time, hope, future, Mashiach, future, these big words that represents that there's a creation, there's a storyline to creation. There's a creation, and then there is a revelation of what has to be done in this creation, and then there's a redemption. Like I talked before, like the triangle. It's like movement. There's progression. This created goal-oriented music. Goal-oriented music means that you start off a certain place and you're going on a journey. There's movement in the journey, and you're sensing that it's moving higher and deeper, and then it reaches a crescendo, and then dun, and you reach the peak point. That's the way the nature of the Western music is, and this type of Western music, which is very progressive, that's progress oriented, goal oriented, not cyclical but linear in its nature, is very helpful to develop even the left part of the brain. Like there's serious studies that show that if a person is listening to this type of music and takes a test versus another person, well, obviously in the background music, they may score better on like mathematical tests, because mathematics and music are very much interrelated, because it is a mathematical equation. It's building one to the next. So it helps develop the left part of the brain. Or children that listen even in vitro, listen to music. Sometimes they say their IQ is more developed. Whether or not it's not. The point is that it's mefatech, it's opening up a certain part of the brain, a part of self that is very much linear oriented or mathematical oriented. Okay, now let's get back to nigun. So what is a nigun? So a nigun is like this. A nigun expresses two fundamental ideas, almost simultaneous fundamental ideas. Because on one hand we say that Bereshis bar Elokim, Bereshis also is the word shir, it's music. Tikkun Azariah writes that Bereshis bar Elokim, in the beginning Hashem created the world. The song, there's a creation story, which means it's a beginning, and then we're moving towards, and there's a destiny, there's a destination. We're moving. There's a journey to the destination. And on the other hand, we say that that Hashem is recreating the world at every moment, which means there are two simultaneous things happening every single moment. Every single moment, the world is being mischadish, is being renewed at this very moment. There's a new creation every moment. That's from one perspective. That's like from the perspective of the ayin. But from the perspective of the yesh reality, the present moment is the effect of the past, and the present will be affected to the future. So there are two simultaneously ideas that are being held. There's the gullus within every moment, so to speak. The gullus is the gal, which is the movement, the progress. And then the geula of every moment is the aleph within the gal, which is the presence within the wave. There's the wave, which is another wave comes, another wave goes, which is progress. And then there's the essence, which is the nekud of Mashiach, which in every moment, the nekud of redemption in every moment, which is the depth of every single progress is the moment, right? This moment is the redemptive moment. So a nigun has these two strong emotions very soon. That's why it's a palindrome. And it works backwards and forwards, and it's a nigun has a beginning, has an end. It's moving towards somewhere, towards a destiny. But when you reach the end, you go back to the beginning. And therefore, a nigun never ends. It has a certain structure that never ends. So it has both a sense of opening up the left part of the brain, if you wish, the more, linear thinking, conventional way of thinking, the mathematical part of the brain, and also has a way to open up the right part of the brain and allows you to experience something that's transcendent. So nigun, when you listen to a nigun, you listen to a true expression of, and this is ultimately what Jewish music, we call Jewish music, that's founded on a person steeped in that world. It's almost that, the Kotzker said that there's a level of silence, that iron becomes silent. Silence is the absence of the drama of the world, to get out of this world, which is transcendent. And then there is a higher level, David Malach, who's the Nim Zmir Yisrael, who's the great singer of Israel, is I will sing for you and I will not be silent, which means I will sing from a place of silence, which means I will move from a place of stillness. I will experience Golos from a place of Gula. I will experience Yesh, existence, from a place of Ayin, and do them both simultaneously together. If you can create music at that level, that's a nigun. That's ultimately what a nigun is, to get to that place where you're opening up and both being present and both being, so it's full of gagoyim, it's full of yearning and longing, which is always longing, and yearning represents something that's not there yet. But deep in the music, if you're really in touch with it, you feel tremendous. Sometimes with a real Chassidish nigun, certainly a Chassidic song, you can feel a tremendous amount of gagoyim and longing, a lot of pain, but there's always a redemptive part of it within the song as well. There's a certain state that you're experiencing it. So I would say that's more or less what music is in general, and what Jewish music in particular is. And certainly Hasidic music and what a nigun is.
So definitionally, just because someone's Jewish and making music, that wouldn't qualify as Jewish music. It's more of there's a redemptive quality to the music.
If someone's singing from the neshama, if someone's singing from a place of real depth, there's the barometer of knowing is, I think you can hear whether a song has depth, has longing, has dveikus, has connection, or whether a song is cheap. It's just feeling. It's like it's like just filling the emptiness with sound. That's not music. Music is a journey. It's a journey. It's a process, but it's also a destination, and it's a destination within the journey, and it awakens up these emotions. You feel. A person listens to music, which deep music, they feel connected, they feel davok, they feel connected to Hashem, they feel connected to their soul, they feel connected to Hashem, they feel connected to Torah. That's what music should do. What Alter Rebbe was saying about, the Alter Rebbe said about that the missing element of Tanya is music is, you can't understand Tanya if you don't have music, but you can't have music if you don't have Tanya. It's one and the same thing. If you don't have that experience of dveikos, then the music is just okay, it's a pleasant experience. It's like, it's like, you get tickled. There's no, you get tickled. I don't know what that is. It's like, I think I once spoke about this. The Igvus Mashiach, the generation is called Igvus Mashiach, the ends. The Igvus is like the heel of Mashiach, because people just want to be tickled. You know what tickle does? Like when, you tickle someone. I don't know if you tickle someone, but tickle means like, I feel good, very, very happy. I feel very good, like in this now, but when you stop tickling me, there's no lasting experience from the tickle. It's very superficial. You're just touching me on the outside. Just tickle me a little bit. I just want to be a little bit inspired for the 5 minutes. I can cry for 5 minutes, then I want to go back to my life.
It's like as a parent with a young child, it's like you want to tickle them and let that be enough. But they always come back for more.
Of course, that's the whole idea of the tickle.
It's never
enough. You're right. Tickling will never give exactly. It's a very good metaphor because when you tickle a child, the child always wants more tickle until they start crying, because a tickling only feels good when you're tickling. That's what it is. So a person like closes their eyes and listens to music, it's beautiful. But
when the music stops,
when the music stops, if you don't say a kapitel Tehillim or daven or learn or do milas chasadim or do something kind, okay, so it was a nice experience and you got tickled. Okay, excellent. The niggun should create that response within us. Should create that type of response.
Thank you for listening to Rav Pinson's podcast. To submit questions or to sponsor a future episode, please email ravpinsonpodcast@gmail.com. The link is in the description below.